Frank's case. San Diego ranks second in California and eighth in the country in terms of population. Living there in 1977 was Frank, an early 60s Marine Corps veteran. To his 3 children, he was a devoted father. In addition, he oversaw Bott's Gift Shop, a charming business in the center of College Grove, San Diego. Up until tragedy suddenly happened, life appeared to be going well. Frank passed away suddenly on April 2, 1977. A quiet room at the back of his beloved store housed his lifeless body, bearing the marks of a brutal death. It was a stabbing wound. When it happened, Frank was working alone. As soon as the incident became widely known, dedicated investigators sprang into action. Meticulously searched every square inch of the store, removing fingerprints from various surfaces. Moreover, they came across an unusual hat, which they assumed the murderer of Frank could have left behind. After gathering all this evidence, the investigators aggressively pursued justice. But in all of their hours spent following up on leads, speaking with witnesses, and looking for hints, the investigators came upon a maddening silence. Frank's killer, as elusive as a ghost in the night, cast a terrifying shadow over the inquiry. Frank's bereaved family faced a painful question every day as the case grew progressively cold. Who among the innumerable faces in their lives knew the terrible truth about Frank's premature death? A fresh batch of detectives took up the case again in 2021 and carried it through. They took great care to gather several DNA samples, which they then sent to 5 distinct labs for testing. Texas held the 5th of these labs, and San Diego held the other 4. The labs and law enforcement agencies working together promised to reveal the truth that had long escaped justice. As DNA analysis was done on the unique hat found at the crime scene and some meticulously gathered fingernail scrapings from Frank's body back in 1977, the elusive puzzle pieces started to fit. Amazingly, a fingerprint lifted from a glass countertop in Frank's store matched exactly to both sets of DNA. At last, the suspect had a name: Norman Lamont Jones. The team working on the inquiry was shocked by the disclosure. The shockingly young age of Jones, 16 years old, at the time of Frank's death, starkly contrasted with the seriousness of the crime. The knowledge that a teenager might have committed such a crime left everyone reflecting on the potential evil that exists within the human spirit. Examining Norman's background more closely revealed that he had started his criminal career at the young age of 14 and continued it all through his adult life. Norman was a prisoner many times over. Tragically, in November 1991, a shooting that followed a robbery at the Fashion Valley Shopping Center claimed his life. The compelling storyline begins with 5 police officers quickly encircling Norman in the Fashion Valley parking lot after hearing reports of an armed robbery. With police helicopters circling above and law enforcement all around him, Norman stayed in his car, his right hand hidden. Even after receiving explicit orders to submit, the atmosphere grew more tense. At last, Norman got out of his car and started waving what looked to be a real weapon. Fearing for their lives, the cops retaliated by shooting Norman fatally. It turned out later that the weapon he was brandishing was a toy gun. When the detectives later called to tell Frank's kids they had found their father's killer, they were in shock. Among them was John Bott, who struggled to absorb the material. None of us thought after 46 years that anything would ever come of it, so we were all a little surprised at that, John said, taking comfort in the knowledge that Norman, the man he felt had killed his father, was no longer living. Happily, no one would ever die because of him after 1991. Knowing what happened to the murderer gave the bereaved family some comfort. Though they were appreciative of the resolution, they could never face the person who had caused them such suffering and loss. A brilliant and vibrant borough, Queens, New York, is alive. Over 2.3 million people call it home, and together they help to define its distinctive character. The smell of freshly baked bagels and coffee combines with the perfume of hot curries and fragrant herbs from the neighborhood bodegas. Like many cities, Queens has a darker side, despite its brisk energy and brilliant lights. The grittier, less wealthy parts of the city rife with criminal activity, best illustrate its sharp contrast. Underlying the city's lively vitality are gangs, narcotics, and violence. Jermaine Dixon's shooting serves as a heartbreaking reminder that even amidst the city's glittering cityscape, disaster and danger can strike at any moment. October 1, 1974, saw the birth of Jermaine Dixon, who grew up in the violent and impoverished streets of Brooklyn, New York. His surroundings lured him to the streets at an early age. He joined the fabled Patio Crew, a gang that frequented a Flatbush eatery and gained notoriety for themselves when he was a teenager. Jermaine advanced quickly in the crew, earning the respect of his colleagues. He was a very tough enforcer, and his violent past preceded him. In 1992, prosecutors found Jermaine and Emile, his brother, guilty of killing Alfonso Gooden. Prosecutors named Dixon as the gunman in Alfonso Gooden's 1992 murder, and he served 19 years in prison. His brother, Emile Dixon, also received a life sentence for the same crime. During his time in prison, Jermaine began to turn his life around. He became a model prisoner, earning the respect of both inmates and guards. Following his bachelor's in business, he asked for compassionate release, admitting responsibility for his deeds and looking for a chance to prove his value. It is clear that I'm not the young man that Your Honor sentenced 20 years ago. I am now asking Your Honor to again take a chance with me and let me re-enter society to prove to my mother, children, family, and also the court that I can and will do the right thing upon release. I blame no one else but myself for the road I chose that put me in my current situation, Dixon said in a heartfelt letter aimed at persuading Judge Raymond Deary of his genuineness. Dixon wanted the judge to believe that, in spite of his previous transgressions, he was a changed man deserving of another shot at life. Dixon was determined to enhance his life and make a positive impact on society. In 2011, Jermaine received parole after 19 years of incarceration. Moving to Ozone Park, Queens, he made an effort to start again. Dixon was aware of his past mistakes and determined to make apologies. Dixon struggled to separate himself from the drug trade and other illegal enterprises, though, because his criminal history followed him around. Dixon made reform attempts, but the authorities continued to closely monitor him. On that fateful morning of September 6, 2021, a crime occurred in South Ozone Park. The violent crime was well planned. The gunman shot Jermaine Dixon, 46, a man who had recently been attempting to restore his life, at point-blank range at 8 in the morning. Surveillance footage later revealed the gunman to be from Teaneck, New Jersey, dressed in typical Hasidic clothing. On camera, the attacker stood next to a white Nissan automobile with its door, trunk, and hood open, appearing to be working beneath the hood. As Dixon was walking up to his Ford Edge SUV, the attacker quickly pulled out a gun from under the engine, rounded on him from behind, and shot him in the head at very close range. When the gunman had finished examining Dixon's corpse, he closed the Nissan's hood and drove away in another car. During the incident, one other person was with the gunman, watching over Dixon. Before ambushing Dixon as he walked up to his car, the gunman, who wore white gloves and a white face mask, had been following him for many hours. The gunman reportedly tried, but was unable, to take $10,000 from Dixon's pocket and left the scene empty-handed. The event startled the community and raised concerns about the region's security and safety. Dixon was sleeping at a Comfort Inn nearby, according to individuals close to the inquiry, and investigators discovered that Dixon had been glancing over his shoulder a lot when he walked around the neighborhood. Dixon was obviously aware of possible targets based on his circumspect actions. They believed the needless killing had its roots in the drug trade. After the shooting, detectives got right to work, going over the local surveillance tapes. The cops scoured numerous cameras, trailing a traditionally Hasidic-dressed man until he disguised himself. Afterwards, investigators determined that the gunman was Ron Reeder, who had 3 city-sealed arrests. Investigators identified Reeder and a second suspect, who had been watching Dixon for many hours before the attack, using a combination of eyewitness reports, security video, and ballistic evidence. While they continued to look for the second suspect, Reeder was unmistakably the one who fired the gun. Born in Teaneck, New Jersey, Ron Reeder grew up in a lower-middle-class home. As a youngster, he began to hang around with a violent gang, frequently using drastic methods to keep its hold on the local drug trade. Rising fast through the ranks, Reeder developed a reputation as a merciless enforcer who would stop at nothing to get what he desired. He had already completed 2 stints in state jail. In 1986, he received a 4 to 6 year sentence in Brooklyn for committing robberies and possessing weapons. Before his release, he served 3 years. Later, a 21-year jail term for manslaughter found Reeder guilty. In 2012, he was paroled. Notwithstanding his criminal past, he avoided any major run-ins with the authorities by maintaining a very low profile following his release from jail. Officials revealed his background in 2021 when they identified him as the gunman in the well-publicized shooting of Jermaine Dixon in Queens, New York. Law officials eventually caught Reeder, despite his best efforts to pass for a Hasidic man, and now charge him with murder and weapon possession. Late in February, a task force including the NYPD and the Bergen County Regional SWAT Squad invaded the defendant's Garden State apartment. On February 23, 2023, the Bergen County Regional SWAT Team and the NYPD detained 52-year-old Ron Reeder in New Jersey and sent him to New York to face murder and weaponry charges. The arrest of Reeder somewhat resolved the issue, but the death of Jermaine Dixon served as a reminder of the harm that needless violence can inflict on both communities and individuals. Orange County, New York's Middletown, is its biggest city. Middletown locals love the close-knit suburban atmosphere. Middletown's crime rate is nearly average compared to other American cities and towns of all sizes, with 12 crimes per 1,000 inhabitants overall. However, a terrible crime occurred on a cold night in March 2003. Megan McDonald, then 20 years old, finished her shift at the American Cafe in Orange County, New York's Galleria Mall, on March 13th. According to family and friends, Megan was a diligent and committed person in all spheres of her life. Her father was a police investigator. Besides, she was amiable, giving, and kind. Megan would be the first to come and rescue a friend or family member in need. She was the focus of her family's care and attention. After her cafe job, Megan took money from the mall ATM. At 7 p.m., she drove by her friend's Greenway Terrace party. She refused their offer, explaining she was going to Middletown with friends. She spoke, ate, and watched Friends with her other friend at 7:30. Megan said she had to go home about midnight before her early duty the next morning. Megan declined and arrived at the Greenway Terrace party around 12:15 a.m. on March 14, 2003. She returned to this event for unknown reasons, but authorities suspect her murder was there. Megan drove by, possibly engaging in conversation with friends rather than entering the event. She rushed to her Kensington Manor Apartments parking lot and apartment. The video showed a black hatchback following Megan's car and blasting music. A loud-sounding black Honda Civic hatchback was following her automobile the night of her murder. The following morning, detectives believed Megan knew about the pursuit and wanted to go to her apartment when they found her car precariously parked at the back of the parking lot. Megan never returned to her apartment. No one knew her location after 24 hours. One guy found Megan's body in a remote area off Bowser Road around 1 p.m. on March 15, 2003. Detectives concluded Megan died early on March 14th, when her car passed the Greenway Terrace party. They concluded Megan died from acute head trauma. Investigators spent 20 years reconstructing her death, finding her perpetrator, and imprisoning them. JusticeForMegan.com, her family's website, revealed her murder. Megan's father is a detective, so the case continues. The police spent 20 years painstakingly investigating her case. Over time, police erected posters and billboards on busy road, requesting information. Over the course of 2 decades, researchers gathered physical evidence, DNA samples, and advanced technology. All of this contributed to identifying Megan's killer in 2023. Edward V. Hawley, incarcerated for unrelated offenses, faced charges for Megan's murder. Despite little evidence, police questioned Hawley 4 times and considered her a top suspect until 2023. DNA technology progressed between 2003 and 2023, leading to Hawley's arrest and charges. Meg and Hawley dated. The police discovered their breakup days before she died. The arrest reshaped the story of a random murder between strangers. Experts say the separation may have sparked intimate partner violence. Police said Hawley owed Megan a lot of money, which led to his death. From May 2023 on, the investigation will yield further information during and after the trial. Workaholic Megan McDonald died young. She may be able to get justice thanks to Orange County Police. The punishment of the villain who kidnapped Megan's child will soothe her family and friends.